Hi, this is Neil Clements, and this is The Real Deal with Neil. Today we're going to be talking about bank funding. How do we put together bank funding for land? What banks do we go to? How do we know who will and who won't fund our deals? And how do we get the best deal possible when working with banks on our land? Let's get to it. So let me start you off with how I found the bank partners that I work with now. And so what I started off doing was I probably like a lot of people with banks is I started talking to the big banks. So, I went to the people that I bank with, so I went to Chase, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, you name it. Started calling them, asking to talk about flips and real estate investments. And you would have thought that they thought I was crazy. They're like, no, we don't do flips. We'll maybe do like owner occupied offices or, you want to buy a house. We'll do something for you to move into. But we're not going to do flips. We're not going to do houses. We're not going to do land. And so I learned really, really quick that that's not who you go to. And so if you're watching this video and you're thinking, oh, well, it's so easy to get, bank funding for land. Well, I don't think you've tried yet. And if you have, you're probably, I guess, a little bit smarter than I was when I was just starting out. And so what I ultimately had to do is I figured out that there's a really handy resource that the FDIC puts together. And that is a list of banks that are insured through the FDIC. Who would have thought that they actually have a list that you can search? So I went to the FDIC search for banks. I did my location. Fortunately, I lived in Dallas, and then my property was also near Dallas as well. And so I was able to search for properties within, say, a 30-mile radius, came up with 50 or 60 banks, and then I just started going to town. I was very used to cold calling. I'd done it for a very long time in multiple different industries and multiple different walks of life. And so I just cold called these bankers, and I learned a lot of lessons along the way, a lot of which that I'm going to share with you today on how to find the right person to talk to and why you need multiple banks and the different types of banks that are actually going to talk to you. But what I really found is that out of the 60 banks or so that I talked to, that there were really only 3 to 5 that I really resonated with, who even wanted to do my deals in the first place, and who were going to give me terms that weren't just completely outrageous. They weren't requiring 50% down, or they weren't going to charge me prime plus 5, 13 or 14% interest at this point. And there were only a handful that I actually found. And I even expanded the radius a little bit further, found some other good banks, but let's just say it was hard. In the land investing business, I guess there's not really much that's easy, except for finding money from people who are really expensive to find money from. And we've got a whole nother video about that where I'm going to compare the different funding sources. So that'll be coming out soon for you to watch. But today we're going to go through banks. So as far as banks go, I highly recommend that you have 3 to 5 banks who you're comfortable with, who they have your documents, they have you pre-approved, and they have you ready to go. And I'll tell you why. Because you only have one bank. The trouble with banks is almost they get greedy. I mean, just I guess any kind of money person does eventually, or at least struggles with it. And so there have definitely been times where having multiple banks saved my rear. So I'll give you an example. So, one of the largest real estate investments I've done is $1 million purchase, multi-million-dollar exit afterwards. Very fortunate to be a part of it. The first bank that I went to that I found, it was actually outside of my geographical range. It was about 3 hours east of where I am. And so being that far away, I called all my local contacts and none of them wanted to do it. And so I went ahead, I said, okay, if none of my local banks want to do it because of geography, which is something you learn about banks, is banks only want to lend in the county that they're in or county touching it. Most of the time, at least the regional community banks, which we'll talk about in a little bit, that's who you need to go to. So I went and I called regional community banks over in that area in those counties. And so I found a bank out of the 10 that I talked to who wanted to do a project like this. And so $1 million was quite a sizable purchase price in that area, especially for a relationship that they had never met. They'd never met me before. And I was calling them from Dallas and they were like, who is this? Who is this city slicker calling us out in the country? But anyways, as I was talking to them, they gave me some initial terms, which were pretty good. It was prime plus 1, 8.5% rate plus a point. And I was like, okay, cool. I'll do that on that big of a purchase. That's not bad at all. 20% down. And they take it to loan committee. They spend they gather all my documents. And then they go to loan committee. It takes 2 or 3 weeks, which is way longer than it should. But anyways, they come back and they're like, hey, I just want to let you know we got everything approved. However, during loan committee, the president of the bank was concerned with a new relationship. So, he wanted to have 35% down. He wanted you to be at a 10% rate. He wanted you to be at, 2 points up front. And so, congratulations, I got you approved. We can close on you next month. We're good to go. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, yes, I'm very grateful that you got me approved, but now those terms. And he said, well, what do you want me to do? You want me to like take it back at the terms that I told you before? And I said, well, yeah, is it obviously, duh. But anyways, he took it back. He couldn't get it approved. And so I just told him, hey, well, you know, like, unless y'all can keep your commitments that you make to me, this is not going to be a relationship that we can continue. And he said, okay, well, if you find something better, go with them. If not, we'll be here for you. And so I proceeded to go out, look at different banks. I actually ended up calling an ag lender, and because the property was currently being used for cattle when I bought it, they were actually able to lend on it. And believe it or not, they were able to give me like an 8% rate or 7.5% rate on a 30-year fixed with like 20% down with half a point origination. And it was like, gosh, big deal. And I know that maybe to some people watching, it might not seem like a big deal to have like 20% down versus 35% down. But on $1 million property, I mean, that's like $100,000 to $150,000 out of pocket. And I don't know about you, but that's a lot of money. That's a lot of extra money when you're already coming to the table with $200,000. And then in addition to that, like the interest rate, an 8% versus a 10%, again, on like an $800,000 loan or $700,000 loan, over the course of the year, 2% of that is what, $15,000, $20,000? We're talking about big sums of money here that I'd just be leaving on the table by going with those loan terms. And so why am I telling you all this? Well, I'm telling you all of this to say that even in new areas that you go to, if you don't have a few different people to compare it to, or you don't know what a good term is versus a bad term on a loan, then you need to make sure to negotiate it. And you need to make sure to have multiple different options. There have been other times where some of the primary banking relationships that I have, that I even have deposits at, that they get greedy. They start trying to charge an extra percentage point on the interest rate, or they start trying to charge extra points. So this one bank that I work with all the time wanted to go from 20% down to 40% down as normal. And they still wanted like a personal guarantee for me. And I'm just, I don't know, guys, preaching to the choir here, probably for y'all listening, probably some of the same things y'all have dealt with banks. But if you don't have multiple relationships to where you can equalize the negotiating plane, then you're going to get yourself in trouble because you're just going to take whatever they give you. And that's not how you need to do it when working with banks. Okay, so moving on from that, that's my little spiel. Banks are great to work with. You just need to have multiple of them so you can actually negotiate, okay? Stay with me. The types of banks. So as I said earlier, you're probably not going with the big national banks. A lot of times the ones that you want to find is you want to focus on the small community banks. Their websites don't look great. They probably don't have QuickBooks integrations. They look like a hometown rural country bank. And this is even true for properties close to like a dense metro like DFW. I'm still gonna try to go to some of the country banks, even up to maybe like 60 miles away, 45 miles away. A lot of them will still do it if it's touching counties or 2 counties away. And so with that, I'm looking specifically for banks that don't look large. Well, how can you tell that? Well, whenever you look at a bank's website, you can go in and you can view their locations. Specifically, you're trying to find banks with locations, typically with 5 or less. Maybe sometimes you can go up to like 7 locations, but that's going to be your hotspot. And so like, why is that your hotspot? Well, these small community banks, what you automatically know about them is that they are going to be more flexible. Why are they more flexible? Well, they realize that they're out in the country. They realize that they don't have just immense deposits. They realize that not everybody is knocking down their door on a daily basis to get a loan from them. And they have to be more flexible because they are out, say, in a country bank or a smaller bank, they're trying to grow. They're gonna give you the flexibility because a lot of times you're gonna be able to talk directly to the president of the bank or the senior vice president or the COO, whatever you wanna call them. And you're gonna be able to plead your case. And you better have a good pitch, right? Have a good pitch prepared on why the deal you're looking at is a fantastic investment, why you're a reliable investor, how you've done this, and how you're not going to lose their money and why they should take the risk on it. And so that's the huge advantage. And that's some of the best banking relationships, like my primary ones that I go to over and over again, is the small community bank or credit union that has less than 5 branches. That is like my bread and butter where I'm getting majority of my financing from. The next after that is your mid-sized banks. So that's going to be banks of like, say, 5 to 20 branches. The key to those is I like them to be headquartered in an area that's rural. And so a lot of times what you see, especially in a big metro, you'll have branch offices, maybe in a really dense population. And so like there's one bank that I work with who's out of like West Texas, like their main branch, their headquarters, their office, really, really rural, like 2 hours west of DFW. And if you don't know geography out in DFW, like that is really rural. And so whenever they come here, they're expanding to try to get more loans. They're expanding to try to get more deposits. And so they come to the fringes of like the downtown areas and they try to put branches here. Well, again, those same people are going to be, or the same banks are going to be willing to take the risk. In addition, what you're also looking for is you're looking for the right person at the bank to talk to, because they're going to be vice presidents, they're going to be senior vice presidents, they're going to be presidents who you talk to, who have no risk tolerance for real estate and will automatically deny you, versus you talk to a different person at the bank and they say, heck yes. And so it's not only the bank that matters, it's also the person at the bank who matters. And so those are small community banks, mid-sized banks, small to mid-sized banks. Large banks, I wouldn't even try. Multi-state banks, multinational banks, really probably not going to happen. Ag lenders, though, another really, really good option that I've had good success with, really good terms from them. So I would definitely pay attention to them as well for you to get your financing. And so how do you get to the right person at the bank? Well, like I said earlier, you're typically talking to an SVP, like a senior vice president. You're talking to a vice president. You're going to be talking to somebody at the top because you're looking for a custom loan option. You're looking for a land investment loan. And a lot of times that's not something that they do every single day. And so you're wanting to customize that to what you need. And so that's how you need to talk to. So like, what do you say? Like, how do you even get to them? Well, what you need to do is, call into the branch that's closest to your property, talk to the receptionist or the front office person, whoever answers, and you just simply tell them what you're looking for. I've got a land investment opportunity that I have under contract in whatever city you're in, whatever state you're in, whatever county you're in. And I was just wondering who I would talk to about getting a loan for it. And they're going to say, oh, well, that's, Jim Bob, or that's Susie, or that's, branch manager, him, or this. They're going to tell you all this different stuff, and then they'll transfer you to them. And then your objective is just to talk with that person, tell them about the project, tell them what kind of loan you're looking for, and see if that's something their bank is willing to do. And another thing I've had good success with is on the small and community banks, it seems like everybody knows each other. And so if you talk to a bank and they say, that's not really something we do, and say, okay, what other banks around here or what other people do you know who might finance something like this? And they'll say, oh yeah, call my buddy, Jim over at this bank, or call my buddy Bob over here. And so that's been really good because then you can call them with a warm introduction. Hey, I just spoke with Sally from ABC Bank. She said that y'all might be interested in doing this. You come with a warm referral. Man, hit it out of the park. So that's really, really helpful. What do banks want to see? Well, banks want to see that you have your stuff together. Ideally, this isn't your first rodeo. It's not your first real estate investment. They're going to want to see a personal financial statement. They care about your net worth. They care about where your assets are. They care about where your deposits are, especially if it's not at their bank. They're going to want to see tax returns and business returns for probably the last 2 or 3 years. They're going to want to see current P&L. They're going to want to see a balance sheet. And they're going to want to see a written loan application. A lot of times pictures of the property, values of the property, any kind of due diligence that you've done. And they're going to want to see that you're put together. They're going to want to see your numbers. And so what I've done is I've got a folder on my computer. I call that like my, lender application packet. And every time I talk to a new lender, which I do have to still do often, when I talk to them and they say they need these documents, I'm ahead of them. I'm like, hey, what do you need? You need a PFS, you need P&Ls, you need business statements, individual tax returns. Do you want 2 years or do you want 3 years? Oh, we want 2 years. Okay, great. Do you want a loan application now or do you just want to view my financials first? What's best for you? And so whenever you speak their language and you have your stuff prepared for them, especially from the stuff you're hearing from me say on this video, it just makes things so much easier. And they know that they're talking with a competent individual versus somebody who's a newbie. Promise you that's going to get you a lot further. The last thing I'll tell you about banks is that every bank wants a relationship. And that's the pitch that as you grow with them, that you're going to continually get. And so what I mean by that is they want to know that you're in this for the long run. They don't want to just be like you're one and off. They don't want to just give you money one time and then you use them for 6 months for a flip or 3 months for a flip and then you pay it back. They want to know you want to do multiple deals. They want you to have high down payments. They want you to have skin in the game. They want you to put deposits there eventually, especially if it's a really good relationship with a bank. They also want to grow with you. And so over time, once you do several deals with one bank, you can start asking for credit lines, secured or maybe unsecured. You can start asking for more generous terms. Hey, we've done 10 deals together over the past year. Can we maybe knock a point off the rate? Can we maybe do a half point of origination? Can we kill some of these junk fees? Can you give me some flexibility flexibility on the term. Instead of 12 months, can you give me 24? Can you make me do quarterly interest payments instead of monthly interest payments? So a relationship goes two ways in my mind. And so as the bank wants more commitment from you, they want more of a relationship with you. Well, you also want more of a relationship with them, and you want them to put up as you're putting up. And so guys, I hope you enjoyed this overview of banks. This should be able to get you to be able to know where to find the banks, how to search for them, what type of banks you're looking for, how to make the phone calls, what they're going to want to see from you, and then also how to negotiate with them and build a relationship with them over time. So I hope you've enjoyed this. If you want to see more like this, let me know below. Thanks.